Gail, Barbara, and Tino in that order. If
Are
Charles
you
doesn't
saying,
turn up.
am I last? Is that what you said?
Mhm.
I found this.
No, I think you're first.
Oh, I'm first.
I don't know.
Tell me, David, where are you putting me?
If Charles does not turn up, it will be the following order: Jay, Mark, Gail, Barbara, and Tino.
Are you saying, am I last? Is that what you said?
Running to it.
No, I think you're first.
Oh, I'm first.
I'm first.
I don't know.
Wait, Henry, founding editor of Plowshares.
Well, Charles lives downstairs from my brother. Maybe I should call.
That's right. The poetry scene in Cambridge is more than a little incestuous.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, folks, it's showtime. And I'm going to spotlight myself here and say good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Community Church of Boston. My name is Dean Stevens, and we always, just for fun and for unity and for warmth, light a candle.
Okay, thanks.
And I don't know if you can see from there. Well, I'm holding it straight, but now you'll notice that it's a crooked candle. I got it out of the home of Bob Datilio, whose estate we've been helping to settle. And I'll talk more about that as the morning goes along early on. But it's a crooked candle. And it reminds me of this beautiful little song by my friend Daryl Scott. I walk a crooked road to get where I am going. To get where I am going, I must walk a crooked road. And only when I'm looking back, I see the straight and narrow. I see the straight and narrow when I walk a crooked road. I sing a lonesome song to anyone who'll listen. To anyone who'll listen, I will sing a lonesome song. And when I hear you singing too, the sorrow sounds so hopeful. The sorrow sounds so hopeful when I sing my lonesome song. And a lonesome song will be my true companion when all else has abandoned for the singing of their own. And a lonesome song will fill my days with gladness, make joy out of my sadness when I sing this lonesome song to you. And I love with all my heart. There is no way of stopping. I have no way of stopping. I just love with all my heart. Through the broken and the beautiful, the bad news and the good news, the bad news and the good news, as I love with all my heart. And a loving heart will be my true companion when all else has abandoned for the loving of their own. And a loving heart will fill my days with gladness, make joy out of my sadness when I bring this loving heart to you. I long to be a happy man in this life that I have been given. In this life that I have been given, I long to be a happy man. And when the noise turns to stillness, I see maybe I have the makings. I see maybe I have the makings to be one happy man. And a happy man will be my true companion when all else has abandoned for the happy of their own. And a happy man will fill my days with gladness, make joy out of sadness when I show this happy man to you. And I walk a crooked road to get where I am going. To get where I am going, I must walk a crooked road. And only when I am looking back, I see the straight and narrow. I see the straight and narrow when I walk a crooked road. Song of Daryl Scott. And I welcome you. And I tell you that we have an embarrassment of poetry this morning. And not only that, but we have, I got to tell you about, I was talking about Bob Datilio, who passed away about 1 year and 3 months ago. And his estate was finally settled, and we got his books that would have gone in the dumpster if we had not grabbed them. And this is only a part of them, and I will tell you a little bit about what's here. He was a voracious, avaricious book collector, maybe a hoarder, and a lot of just very great old and new books, mostly of a scholarly, literary nature, but all kinds of stuff. And I point out especially the poetry section, which is enormous. He was especially interested, and I'm not sure exactly why, in Ezra Pound. And maybe some want to tell me why. I heard he was kind of a fascist anti-Jew. I don't know much about Ezra Pound, but there's like 20 books, everything he wrote and everything, everything ever written about him. And there's a pile this high of a literary journal about just Ezra Pound studies, and ton of other poets. Please, any one of you who want to come by and see this collection of books, there's a huge section of Shakespeare, huge section of Napoleon, and history, music, opera, dance. There's 8 boxes of books about dance. His wife was in the Boston Ballet and also a dance instructor at Boston Conservatory. Over here is just kind of miscellaneous. We're just trying to categorize all this stuff. Miscellaneous, literary, scholarly. We still have 15 boxes upstairs, and I just brought one down just for fun. I just want to see what's here. Film and Feelings by Raymond Durgnat. I think you'll be interested. Kenneth Rexroth and James Laughlin, Selected Letters. I found out that Kenneth Rexroth is a poet, and I haven't read any of his stuff. Norman Mailer, Existential Errands. There's a ton of Norman Mailer over here. What are intellectuals good for? Oh, Uncorrected Galley, Not for Resale. And it has this pyramid. Up top is capitalism, and here is I can't read that. We rule you, we fool you, we shoot at you, we eat for you. And down here is we feed you, and it's this pyramid. Anyway, looks like a cool book. Upstairs, there's a ton of books about Bob Datilio's passion, which is Sacco and Vanzetti. He studied the Sacco and Vanzetti case pretty much his whole life, and that was our connection to him, because our church has in our DNA Sacco and Vanzetti. It was one of our first struggles in 1920 when the church was founded, and some of the founding mothers came to know Vanzetti and visited him and gave him English lessons at the jail before they were, of course, executed in 1927. And there's another one he's really interested in. Tina Modotti, a photographer, Italian, who came to America, was a silent film star, and then became a photographer in Mexico and photographed all the murals and hung out with Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera and Orozco and all these, Trotsky. Really interesting character. Datilio was really interested in her, and there's a ton of books about her, and art, architecture, photography. It's endless. A couple of announcements about upcoming things. I've been doing a Friday night music series all this winter, and it's gone really well. We've raised several, thousands of dollars for a cause of performers who have suffered so much during this pandemic. And we've had 8 of them so far. And the next one I'm especially interested in because I'm doing it myself. It's me doing a concert this Friday. It's a benefit for a town called Teocinte. Teocinte is a regular stop on my El Salvador trips that I, in normal times, take every 6 months and take groups. We visit villages, repopulated villages, and Teocinte is one of them. Teocinte is where there's a beautiful group of tailors, seamstresses, who make all kinds of amazing stuff out of cloth from Guatemala. These kind of things, organizer, backpack. I shamelessly peddle them everywhere I go. Tote bag, little bag, hat, gorra. Anyway, that's this Friday, and it's a benefit for a water project that the Arlington Teocinte Sister City Project is working on. You can find out more about it in the chat. I will put the Eventbrite ticket link there. So enough. One more announcement here. We're trying to digest this mountain of books, and we're gonna have a monthly book night. Is this going to turn into a bookstore? Is this going to turn into a library? Is this going to be all moved to Boomerangs, the thrift store, or to a beautiful one that's called More Than Words? It's a great organization that works with young people and on selling used books. There's a used book thrift store benefit for these young people, and so I want to get them involved too. So we're going to have a monthly book night, and the first one will be February 28th, right here, physically in Copley Square at our church today, or on that evening, February 28th, 7 p.m. Join us and have a look at what we've got here, and especially look at the poetry section, because we're about to hear a whole lot of it. And it's really wonderful to introduce our friend David Gullette, who's going to be our MC for this feast of poetry. Thank you, David. David is the instigator of the Poets Theater that has done several presentations at Community Church on a range of different topics, including this second act of the one called A Murmuration of Poets. David.
Thank you, Dean. Welcome, poets. In a sentence or two, the Poets Theater was founded in 1950 by a bunch of quite young poets who were hanging out in Harvard Square in those days. You may know the names John Ashbery, Richard Wilbur, Frank O'Hara, even Alison Lurie, who I think had not published her first novel yet, was a part of the scene there, and the great Molly Howe, whose mother was best friends with Samuel Beckett's mother, and Molly and Sam grew up together as kids. And Molly was the president of the Poets Theater for many years until her death early in this new century. It's been a wonderful, wonderful ride. It's died at least twice, and it's alive again for the third time. Let me go right into the introduction of our poets. Our first poet is Joseph, Aka Jay Featherstone, who was actually a college classmate of mine, but we only ran into each other at a New Year's party a couple of years ago and compared notes that we were of the same age. We were both poets, and he had just finished a new book of poems, was looking for a publisher. I do have a small publishing house called Fenway Press, www.fenwaypress.com. And we ended up publishing Jay's second book of poems. He lives up in a little part on the outskirts of downtown Gloucester called, well, it's the northern, what's it, Braces Point?
Eastern.
Is that right? Huh? Eastern Point. Braces Cove, I guess, is a part of Eastern Point. And Jay's first book of poems is called Braces Cove. So the beautiful, beautiful book called Glass, which we published a couple of years ago. It's done well. We still get orders for it. And there's a new poem. I'll just alert you in advance. Jay has written one long poem, which Fenway Press will publish sometime this year, as a chapbook called Vermeer Paints My Mother. The fantasy is that
Yes.
his mother and Vermeer have both come back from that veil beyond the living, and Jay has commissioned Vermeer to do a painting of his mother. So this will come out as a chapbook, but also as a virtual interactive book on our website, where you can click on a certain number and see the Vermeer painting that's being referred to at the time. We all love Vermeer. The great tragedy of my life is my favorite Vermeer was stolen from the Gardner Museum right next door to my office at Simmons College. I've never forgiven those thieves. I don't believe in capital punishment except for people that steal Vermeers. Jay Featherstone, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for organizing this. And thanks to the Poets Theater and the community church. So my first poem is a poem about grief and mourning. My wife of 55 years died in June of this past June, and I'm still in the passages of mourning. Indeed, I think I will never stop mourning her, so there'll be a lot of these poems. Music. The nor'easter arrives in Gloucester with slashing rain and snow, and then rain again. At 3 a.m., he tugs open the door to the ice-slicked porch. Storm clouds have opened one high porthole, filling with fat stars. Orion's belt adds brilliance to wonder. He can almost hear music, a funeral march. Sad at first, then processional, stately, as if asking in song, who will follow us over city, sky, and sea? Yes, who will follow? He turned 81 this past June, the same month his wife of 55 years, his beloved Helen, died. Now he wonders who is next. The music is unfamiliar. He thinks he made it up and idly wishes he knew the notes well enough to write it down. The song would be a fitting tribute, he thinks, but he realizes he's forgetting it even as he listens. Better stick to what the poet called the music of what happens, he decides. The only music he's used to making, combining words and thoughts with silence. Then this next poem is shocking in parts. I was diagnosed with an incurable version of cancer 21 years ago, 22 years ago, and underwent a series of experimental treatments with the Spider-Man levels of radiation, and came out, as you can see. So this was part way of that journey, which now and then occurs to me something about it to write a poem about. This is called Old Friends. A large branch, ingrown, almost kills one of my best friends, the white pine that grows outside my study window. Post-radical surgery, the tree's open wounds seep dark, then clear pitch. As for me, 2 rounds of chemo have pulled 0 inside my head. I barely move arms, hands. I give up trying to write with the pencil in my mouth. An ICU nurse quoted me, drug-soaked, as saying, "There is no cure, only prophecy. First the body, then the words, and then the mind." They adjust my dose. When I start back to work, I open my window and talk damage with the tree. We agree that the worst is not death. It's the interval in between. The in between of needles, pains, and pus. the fear of feeling skin peel away in layers of snake paper. Something surprising, I tell the tree. I stopped feeling bald and doomed when spring turned out with shad. Foxes. This is called Foxes. There's a reference to the end of Foxes about a fairy tale where if you put salt on pheasants' tails, they succumb to you and you could carry them home. You can carry them home. Foxes. Night driving, my eyes less certain now. Could that flash of red be a fox? In the headlights, I make out his black stockings clearing a stone wall. A line, perhaps, between fact and fable. During the day, he naps under my study, where his hot stink heats the air. This filled my gentle, aging cat, Boris, with unease. Some years, I see two grown foxes in a circle of grass under the oaks, tending 4 or 5 pups who wrestle and bark rudely in the faces of their elders. I suspect that foxes do not fear the hereafter. If there is another life, let me not endure it among saved humans. Let me spend it as a fox, running under the stars, standing erect as a swamp iris from the curl of my tail to my blackberry nose. That was what I once thought. Now I'm not so sure. Today, another pair of red foxes in my yard, ahead of spring, lean, lithe, strong. They yet look newly vulnerable to me now, imperiled like all the wild things. Snow is predicted. The neighbors who threatened to put out poison for them could never have really looked at them, really seen them. Their beauty and elegance, first not noticed, then indisputable, almost make me lose my senses, turning me into one of the pheasants in the old fairy tale. Put salt on my tail, I whisper to the foxes as they vanish into the woods, and I am yours for the taking. This is a happy poem. It's after the storm. Rack and litter of vermilion wood from the fallen cherry tree. Eastward, the surf still pounds like thunder. The nor'easter blows away. Peace is settling. Wind battered, my good ear catches fresh consent. A lark is singing as it rises and falls. The warbler tops the shad tree. Amorous of his mate and his art, he performs the work of praise. Breath is my necessity. I take in the washed and needful air in all its abundance. I am left to say, joy is the condition of living. Surprised by sun, all that I do not know, how it goes on, beginning. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jay. Wow. Our next reader is Mark Halliday, whom I've known probably longer than anyone around me these days. I used to babysit for Mark when I was in high school down in Raleigh. So we have a long history. Mark is the author of many wonderful books. He has a particular style of American poetry he's created, which is his own. And his most recent book, his 7th book, is called Losers Dream On, which I highly recommend. without more ado, Marco, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, thanks, Dave. It's kind of weird to be here, quote unquote, virtually. And someday I hope we can do this again in person. So I'm going to read 3 short poems. And it's really fun to hear the poems of everyone else. Okay, well, I've got a poem called Bus Full of Dinosaurs, which was the title of a book I used to read with my son when he was 4 years old. Okay, now in this poem, I use the word little to describe my 4-year-old boy, and then the poem takes a turn to start thinking about the language of poetry. Bus full of dinosaurs. We loved to turn the page and see the bus full of dinosaurs and say, this is not the bus to the park. This is the bus to the Natural History Museum. That was hilarious over and over 30 years ago when my son was little. Because its inviting of sympathy is coercive, little is one of the words you should probably dodge in a poem, along with nice, delicious, excellent, gorgeous, sublime. How many more such nice memories can bubble into consciousness before the sublimity factory ceases production? Let's just say it's excellent that they flare up now and again during our coercive mass transit to extinction. Gorgeous for a second in the dark. This is not the bus to the park. Okay, now I'm going to read a poem called Ernest and Lionel. My father's first name was Ernest, but he didn't like that name. You cannot tell that fact about him from this poem. So in the poem, it's 2003, the summer that my father died. And I'm sitting in his apartment in Midtown Manhattan. Ernest and Lionel. On this cardboard coffee cup from Ernest Klein Market, there's a design with little gold stars bedecking a dark blue ribbon. This is an example of the splendor of human contriving. My father, who will be dead within 2 months, is unspeakably tired. Yet he's still glad to be conscious in the realm of human contriving, where the dark blue ribbon bears these tiny gold stars. Kids love star shapes. They know the shape implies sublimity. We find sublimity in the world, stars in the sky, and we make sublimity for the world, like the design on a coffee cup. And I am thinking these calm thoughts as my father breathes studiously in his last June. I want to live and live and live, despite whatever stupidities and humiliations. And my father still wants this too, even if diminishingly. Now he has us listen to Lionel Hampton playing China Stomp in 1937. And 66 years later, we feel sort of secretly gaga at the sublimity that pours through this small apartment. China Stomp lives insouciantly forever. And we who are not dead, listen. Okay, one more poem. This is a poem about the passage of time, which we keep experiencing, and we don't ever quite know how to express that fact sufficiently. This poem has 14 lines and it ends with a rhyming couplet. So we could imagine it's sort of in the neighborhood of being a sonnet. The poem is going to propose a strategy for us. The title is Classic Blunder. After a noticeably happy day, I sleep. And then I wake at dawn to a sudden sense of having erred. What have I done? I've made the classic blunder, the blunder of living onward, forwardly towards some disappointing future. What a fool. I should have lived not forwardly, but sideways or circularly to stay in days like what now has to be called yesterday. Instead, I've allowed the sun already to start pouring through the curtains, the diminishments and inferiorities of a crude and unsentimental next day. To keep that train from leaving the station must call for some incredible level of concentration. Okay, that's it. Thank you, David. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Marco. Great fun. I failed to mention that Marco comes to us from Athens, Ohio, where he runs the writing program at Ohio University. It's a wonderful place. It's almost in West Virginia. It's that far east. Lovely town, Athens, Ohio. Gail Mazer has written many wonderful books of poems. And one of my favorites of hers is a poem about baseball. She's also the founder of a wonderful series of poetry readings here in the Boston area, which is the Blacksmith House Poetry Series in Cambridge. And she's also served as the head of the writing committee of the Fine Arts Works Center out in Provincetown on Cape Cod. So she's a busy woman. There's also her wonderful husband, Michael Mazer, whom we all lament and wish were with us, has a Poets Theater part of his past. He did the illustrations for a kind of a touring show based on Robert Pinsky's translation of Dante's Inferno. So this is a tribute to Michael also as a Poets Theater veteran regular. Gail, you may have the floor.
Thank you, David, and thank you, other readers. It's been great to be here already with you. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Sometimes I tend to lose myself in myself. I think I'll start with a couple of new poems and keep my eye on the time. This poem is called The Flea, which sounds like it might be 400 years old, but it's not that kind of flea. The flea. The flea, that's what the year-rounders call it, rummaging through tools or bric-a-brac, then gossiping all day at their tables in the blistering sun, their faded beach umbrellas barely shading the tarmac. This is what my mother did in New Hampshire, Sunday after widowed Sunday, into her 80s, up at dawn, her wagon packed the night before. By noon, willing to mark down anything, not to have to rewrap and pack the whole kit and caboodle for the sticky 100-mile drive home. Today, I pick up a teapot, white, with a smattering of pink and black and aqua stars. Its flawed gaze, a reject from the star. Its jaunty asterisk, its modern form, manufactured in Syracuse in the 50s, pleases me. 7 starry cups and 5 chipped star-studded plates. Ordinary optimistic dishes, probably used by one Cape Cod family for decades. Only dings and cracks now to tell their homely provenance, their good usage, and keep the price down. Not starstruck, my mother would have felt the edge's roughness with her thumb and found them wanting. It wouldn't have been the chips. She treasured her miniatures, her broken minis. These just weren't her thing. But like a ninny, I can make something of this, can't I? I buy the lot in her magpie memory, wrapped in old globes. for what a cappuccino would cost or a Parisian mystery. I love thinking that mystery and memory rhyme.
Mhm.
They do, right? This poem is called Auburndale, and it's set in 1945. Auburndale, when I grew up, was a small village at the edge of Newton, the sort of less fashionable end of Newton. This photo's matte surface feels more alive than any image a cell phone can provide. The way its shades of gray vary, the way sunlight suffuses the mother's pale hair, the straight dark hair of the boy and girl. Edenic scene, a backyard by a river, water lilies, mallards, a young mother and her children, the camera clicked and captured, gazing captivated at their litter of gray kittens. The war's just over. Schoolyard chants, jump roping taunts at distant enemies. I see London, I see France, I see a hole in Hitler's pants. Also almost over. Someday soon, these three will learn what's happened to their family tree. But today, the unimaginable erasures have yet to be discovered. Those distant branches with scratched X's marking their murdered ones, now, today, about to be penciled in. Oh, all dark and comfortless. Still here in the yard beyond the frame, a rowboat, a wooden dock, the one American grandparent sitting in an Adirondack chair with his fishing pole. Paradisial, pristine, all light, yet no real shadows, only this dappling through the summer willow. How could there be no shadows visible yet? Only this lovely dappled light, like a blessing manifest. Three trees, and this is really addressed to my late husband, Michael. Oh, who you can see on my bulletin board in several forms. Three trees, August afternoon, rag paper, Winsor Newton charcoal, blackened kneaded eraser beside you in the grass. Three bare oak trees. You loved what you called the spikiness of forms, agreed with Rodin that nothing in nature is ugly. Monumental, burnt, those trees expressive for you, as close as if your charcoal had been made of them. You loved the susurrus of brush on canvas, the shh, 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 the charcoal made on paper. You even liked ekphrastic poems. I hated them. You'd love me writing this. That day I asked, was it the only time I asked what you'd been thinking while you drew? And you looked at me blankly. You'd already explained so much to me. That day I wanted to know more, to be inside you, inside your working mind. What? What? How you answered, tree, tree, tree. It's interesting because Michael was so verbal, but I think that was really, it was a sort of startling answer that I had to realize again and again that when he's painting, painting is his thinking. Words aren't his thinking, aren't part of the equation. I think I'll read one more poem at Land's End, which is from my new book with its beautiful cover.
Oh, yeah.
And all I have to do is find the page number. at Land's End. And that is sort of what, that is a kind of, I don't know if you call it a nickname for Provincetown, Massachusetts, which is so far out of the shoreline of the eastern coast. At Land's End, this garden, it's descendant of Stanley's anemones, flowing, pearlescent, like the nacre of shells, their offspring mine now in my yard, fragile beside the orange blare of Dugan's trumpet vine, my almanac of inheritances swarming around my own bee balm and butterfly bush, monarchs and black swallowtails fluttering, a sunflower bowing its great human head toward the sun, the garden's heart, the lilies, its consoling perfumes, the richesse of memory. What would they say today, I wonder, our old ones? Stanley, ancient and clear-eyed, ready to jump into action, and Dugan, irascible, a furious activism far in his past, removed really, past caring about much, yet somehow bracing, abrasive. There, our century long over, and today's news preposterous, still somehow unthinkable, the savage clown at the helm, breaking the toys of the circus he never liked anyway, every treasure, every human pact, tossed aside as if they were created to be broken. Playthings of the world, mortal, uprooted. Oh, Stanley, tending your cultivated dune under the sun of justice, wiry, undefeated, feeding your annual seedlings. One late afternoon long ago, a little too early for martinis, you lay down your clippers on warm flagstone by a withering clump of weeds. Gail, you said, grabbing me by my wrist, urgent. What are we going to do about Bosnia? Where did it come from? Where does it go, that sense of agency? You so ready to drop your tools, compost the cuttings, compost your newspapers for the garden's future, the Times, the Globe, as if here at Land's End, here on the coast, urgent, together we'd have courage, together we'd have energies to do battle forever, as if we could rescue the guttering world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gail. We did pick up Charles Cole on the way, but we're going to finish up with Barbara and Tino. And Charles, we will end with you, if you don't mind. Barbara Rass was a student of mine a million years ago, back in the 70s, late 60s even, at Simmons College. She was came out of New Bedford, which is currently on the map. A wonderful new show hosted by the actor Misha Collins called Road Food. Begins the first episode coming up on PBS, is set in New Bedford. Many of Barbara's poems are also set in New Bedford. And I particularly recommend her most recent book, which is called The Blues of Heaven. It's part of the Pitt poetry series. It's a wonderful book. But when she left Simmons back in the late 60s, early 70s, she disappeared for a while, but she kept writing me from the road. She ended up, as many people in her generation did, in Oregon, not California. Next thing I knew, she'd won the Walt Whitman Prize for the best first book of poems by an American poet. And it's just been triumph after triumph after that. She founded the poetry series. Actually, she founded founded the Trinity University Press not in Hartford, but in San Antonio, and was there for many years. Now being a grandmother, she is in Denver, Colorado, and she joins us today to read us some poems. Barbara, it's a delight to see you.
Thank you, David. It is such a pleasure. And to think that we go back 50 years is both chilling and a cause for great jubilation. And it's also a joy to be with all of these writers who are reading such fabulous poems. And a thank you also to Dean, and I am thrilled to be here. The first poem I'm going to read is called Tethers. God, we need rain and white flowers, petals mimicking teeth and eggshells, and don't forget the christening gown. Elapsed, still respond to holy water. All the fingers before me, all the fingers to come, a balm soothing like ancient rain. I'm still blown away that we walk on a blue ball spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, and a foot wedded to gravity keeps us from a fling out of this world. Once in Morocco, in a market, watched a man and his donkey deliver bread to a stall, and after one round flat loaf fell on the dusty cobblestones, he picked it up, brushed it off, and kissed it. I'd have eaten that bread, hugged the donkey, danced with the kissing man, one hand in the air, waving the way an olive branch waves in a slow wind, the vibrations of oud music carrying us in a circle, tying us in a small knot of humanity. Flags. For some reason, we chose an island off Italy to bring a typewriter for repair, and meanwhile, Chianti, and lounging on the balcony, pondering if Kafka had in fact invented the hard hat, and who came up with the idea of hotel maids folding toilet paper into triangles, pointless points. Imagine the cumulative moments the world bloody wide spent thus, instead of indulging in a decent foot soak, thinking perhaps about a grandmother in the village, her mother's mother, who greets her by taking both her hands and rubbing them long enough to wring out hundreds of secrets. Never forget the names of our breads, she will say, and together they'll sit staring at the horizon. One thing we have in common, seeing as we too are looking out at it now, the horizon, holding up the entire sky, all day pulling down the sun, that golden child reluctant to go to bed. And when there is wind, sending rolls of whipped cream to our shores. But forget flags. Horizon refuses flags. None of that vain flappery, whether the saltire of Scotland, the eagles of Albania, the wounded sheet of Latvia, flags flown in theaters, colonies, operations, flags carried in the Children's Crusade, rags, no doubt, flags for genocide after genocide after genocide. We find it humanly possible to abide. This is a poem that actually refers to New Bedford and Buzzards Bay and Acushnet, an adjoining city in the Acushnet River that runs into the bay. Survival strategies. To dig for quahogs, to feel their edges like smiles and pull against their suck to toss them into a bucket, to feel the wind as a friend, to feel its current as luck, to ignore Capricorn and Cancer presuming to slice the globe, to know the lie and names can never hurt you, to be a gull breezing the blue eating nothing but clouds, to measure your ties to the past by the strength of cobwebs, to haunt the widow's walk, its 12 narrow windows, each the size of a child's coffin. Watch the harbor where the Acushnet runs into Buzzards Bay before it was named a Superfund site full of PCBs. To wonder if that water you swam in summer after aimless summer could get you the way something got your brother too fast, too soon. To bury or burn the whole family you were born to, and talk to them only through the smoke of letters you torch at their graves. To see a snake with a ladybug on its back and still refuse to pray. This next poem is kind of a combination of real events and complete fantasy. It's called The Money Coat. In a strange succession, cousins I didn't know I had started popping into my life. One sending a photo of my father's family and of the 3 generations huddled in the parlor, nobody left but me and the ache of unanswered questions. After the cousins disappeared, I met Pavel, the one who didn't make it to the States and lived as a bachelor in Warsaw, supporting his parents who had survived the war, hiding in holes in the rubble, Germans attacking from the right, Stalin laughing from the left. Chances are Pavel was a figment, but he told me that he thought eating rats paralyzed his parents, making them unfit for reality. Pavel, I said, nobody is fit for reality, but he scoffed, calling me a fool who had never stood in line for bread, which led to an argument about hunger and then agreement about the failure of communism and capitalism, which is why he was headed to the casino to bet it all, his life savings with dumb bravado. And we lost touch. Imagine him winning big, going home to sew his lattes into a coat, a sable coat he bought in the Russian scum at the Kroll Bazaar, haggling for more than an hour, maybe 2, reaching a razor-sharp price. He'll probably sew the money into the lining of his coat, not for security, but in memory of the coats who escaped, the ones who didn't. My dear Pavel, when you board a ship with Vistula docks, I hope the river will wash you of some memories and a lot of pain. Please don't act like a maniac, throwing caviar, Russian caviar, to the seagulls. Don't drink a daily bottle of vodka, the stylish one named the small ponies in the ancient forests of your country. Let the weight of your sable coat anchor you. And when you reach the open ocean, please let the churning of sea foam calm you. Stand at the rail of the ship, the wind animating the fur of your coat, and look into the distance until you can't tell the sting of salt water from the sting of tears. This is the last poem, and it's called Salad Days, and I believe probably most of the people tuned in know that Salad Days today has a reference or has a resonance to mean an innocence of youth and sort of the heyday of the past. In fact, it was first used in Shakespeare's Cleopatra and Antony and Cleopatra, which is why Shakespeare appears in the poem. And when Shakespeare used it, it had a little a little temperament of sorrow in Cleopatra's memory of her youth. So that kind of underlies the poem as well. And this is the last poem I'll read, and I want to thank everyone for their attention. Salad days. How easy then, the fun house at Lincoln Park. Before it grew into a field of weeds, you could buy 5 tickets for $1 from a blank face in a booth and enter the dark with your brother to be scared by tilting floors, phony doors, corpses bursting out of coffins, and once out into blue sky, run breathless to your mother and father. Happy, you could have called them salad days, but why would you? No one in your family had read Shakespeare, so you bought French fries, doused them with malt vinegar, the 4 of you, competing for your share of potatoes improved by salt and grease, and nothing in those early evenings free of care could have prepared you to be the last one left, the one with grief to spare. Thank you very much.
So much, Barbara. We'll turn next to Tino Villanueva, who's written 7 volumes of poetry and has won many awards. When I had lunch with Tino about a year ago, he recalled specifically the actual date that he came and did a reading at Simmons. He says, of course I remember you, I remember the date, I remember who was there. He has a kind of wonderful photographic quality to his memory, which is really endearing. I won't say more. Tino, the floor is yours.
Okay, David, thank you very much. Thank you, Dean. The Community Church, Poets Theater. I have selected 4 poems for this morning. This is titled Something Beyond Light. I don't know too many poems that have to do with the process of writing. I don't think there are enough poems about that topic. The first section of this book, Shaking Off the Dark, deals with this topic of inspiration, the muse. Why does inspiration leave us sometimes? Where does it go? You know, writer's block, right? So that's what the poem is about. You have written the first part of the poem. You see that you have a nice middle to it, and now you need the ending. And it's the ending that is difficult to write. But then you pick up your manuscript and you see suddenly that aha moment. You see where the poem is going, and you go to it and you finish the poem. So that's what the poem is about, what it tries to communicate. Something beyond light. Horizon cleared of mist, claiming part beauty, part dreams. I move toward it in search of names worth saving, ordering stages of my life within the grace that keeps giving. Unbounded, the landscape and the simple stones shudder in dawn's cast. I accept this endless peace. I am called to by something beyond light. Everything matters, feels more generous, alive. I see as I've never seen before. In this long, shimmering present, I write out my heart's memory, tell stories under the spell of my own senses. Line by line, I break silence with words too sudden to refuse. Yes, it's that moment when the words keep coming and you have to take advantage of the moment. You think you have hit the mother lode and you got to go with it. I've selected 2 poems from my latest book. Oh, by the way, that's a book, Shaking Off the Dark, is from 1984. My latest book is titled So Spoke Penelope, from 2013. It's been translated into Italian, French, Spanish, Russian, and German. Here's how it begins. Oh, Penelope, yes, from Greek mythology, from Homer's, the Odyssey. Penelope is the wife of Odysseus. Odysseus, the Greek warrior who goes and fights in the Trojan War. Trojan War takes 10 years. It takes Odysseus 10 more years to get back to Ithaca, where his wife and son, Telemachus, have been waiting for 20 years. So Penelope is presented as a faithful wife, symbol of faithfulness, and boy, to wait 20 years for your significant other, boy, what love, what patience and what love. So this is how the book begins. So spoke Penelope. This is the palace where I've learned to survive, where 2 years ago I embraced Odysseus, stout son of Laertes, one last time. One long embrace was all it took to shape one heartbeat between us before he left for Troy. This is the palace I walk around in from hall to hall, a world of stone and wood that is mine. This is the room where I work in wool and talk it out with myself, where still awake I toss and turn, pace around in the middle of the night, convincing myself once more that the earthly idea of love is still the lifeblood of my body. This is the palace where I wear the crown of faithfulness, where the sound of the sea is the sound I think with. Therefore, if I stand by a window, expecting each time to see the outline of a ship coming toward me, what is it but my love and the passion time gives it to grow for Odysseus, like-minded husband of the cunning mind for whom I wait? So spoke Penelope when she awoke this morning, when the golden cloth of dawn rose out of the sea. And the second poem I'll read is titled The Waiting. Now, she is Queen Penelope. She's not a goddess. Gods and goddesses have no notion of time. They have no notion of the passing of time. So what I'm saying is that she has feelings just like you and just like me. So the passing of time, she felt it. And she must have wondered, am I the only woman who has waited for a lover or a husband, a cousin, a brother to come back from war? I can't be the only woman. There must have been other women who have gone through what I'm going through now. That's the background of the poem, The Waiting. Has ever a woman waited like me? Waited and waited, and if she hadn't, would have had too much to lose, would have been denied so terribly a husband, not to mention orchards, many, droves of sheep and swine, plow fields all around, and twining vines for wine. How many women, I wonder, have waited like me, see, with a racing, tearing heart? Women who waited, stood waiting, lay waiting like me. From where you are every night above me, tell me with your truthful mouth, sky god Zeus. Tell it clearly to me, Athena and Apollo, luminous gods and goddesses who inhabit the high halls of Olympus. How many women before me have waited like me? And I selected just so you'll hear my other voice, from a book from 1999, a chapbook titled Primera Causa, First Cause. I wrote these 10 poems. It's a chapbook of 10 poems on memory and writing. We all have memory. You have memory, I have memory. A writer takes memory one more step and utilizes memory as inspiration, as a muse. In fact, the Greeks had a Mnemosyne, the goddess of memory. So the theme of the book, of the 10 poems of the chapbook, is memory and writing. So let me read the poem. I wrote this in Spanish. Let me read it, the original, so you'll hear the original version, and then I'll read you the excellent translation by Lisa Horowitz of the poem. In Spanish, it's titled Más la voz que el tiempo. Quería escribir y me dolía. Toda la tarde atado al escritorio, a un papel sobre la mesa de trabajo, equivocándome, defendiéndome del error y del ocaso. Quiero decir que pasaron horas, luego días, y cómo entender la existencia que refugió en el aire y en penumbra. ¿Cómo decirlo exactamente? ¿Cómo trazarlo con bolígrafo o a lápiz? Lento es rememorar en claro, recorrer las sombras del recuerdo. Ahí también está la vida. Memoria mía, dame lo que es mío y enséñame la pura manera de contar lo que se ha ido, que pueda más la voz que el tiempo. Voice over time. I wanted to write so badly, it hurt. All afternoon tied to a desk, to a page, flat out on a table. I was getting nowhere, just fending off failure and the darkening light. I want to say hours passed, then days, and how to grasp the essence that came shimmering in air and the obscuring shade. How exactly to say it, to get it laid out on paper with my pencil or pen. Slow, so slow, this process of clear recollection, of sifting back through the shadows of memory. There too is life. Oh, memory, my memory, give me back what is mine and guide me in the very telling of everything that stayed behind. May my voice win out over time. And that is such an excellent translation of the original. It brings to mind something that the Argentine writer Borges, you know Borges, Jorge Luis Borges, who when he saw an excellent translation of one of his poems, he wrote in Spanish, and he knew English. When he saw an excellent translation of one of his poems, he would say that sometimes the original is not faithful to the translation.
Good.
It's an excellent one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tino. Good job. Charles, you're with us. Charles Coe is with us.
That is correct.
That is correct. That's wonderful. I'm glad you could be able to join us. Charles Coe has written 3 books of poetry. He is an adjunct professor of English at Salve Regina College down in Newport, not far from New Bedford, and also Bay Path College in Longmeadow, which is out by Springfield, I believe. I got to know Charles through a wonderful event a couple of years ago in which it was the first anniversary of the death of Leonard Cohen. and some friends of ours put together a wonderful evening of tributes, both in music and in the spoken word, to Leonard Cohen. And I have to say, I went into that not thinking of Leonard Cohen essentially as a poet, but as a wonderful song maker. But I came out feeling that, in fact, Leonard Cohen has paid his dues as a poet. This show, this tribute to Leonard Cohen, had 3 poets involved, 2 of whom were myself and Charles Coe. And Charles, it's a delight to have you. The floor is yours.
Dave, thank you so much. And Dean, thank you for your hospitality. And I'm completely blown away by the poetry I've heard this morning. And I'm flattered to be asked, and I'm very happy to be in everyone's company, in the company of these fine poets. And thanks to everybody who decided to join us this morning as well. I'm going to read 4 poems from a book in progress, my next volume of poetry in progress, and then I'll close with 1 poem from my previous book. So this first poem is about an individual who squatted in the Oval Office for 4 years. I don't even want to speak that individual's name. And when I wrote this poem, I was feeling hopeful that we had seen the last of him, but unfortunately I was wrong, as we're now seeing. Nonetheless, I shall read this poem. It's Inauguration Day, 2021. Like the world's worst party guest, you finally stumble out the door, kicking a table over in a final gesture of contempt, sending shrimp cocktail and grandma's beloved punch bowl crashing, eggnog and crustaceans and shards of 100-year-old crystal spread out across the living room floor. There is no accounting for the carnage in your wake. Some of what you have taken will never be returned. Some of what you have broken will never be fixed. Yet we are here still, exhausted, but resolved to rebuild and reclaim, gathering ourselves and rolling up our sleeves as the light of a new day shines through our broken windows. You know, sometimes you're minding your own business and an image for a poem comes to you. Sometimes it's just a title, and the title pops into your head and you realize, well, shucks, I got to write a poem. I was minding my own business, washing dishes a few months ago, and this title just came into my coconut. This is Butt Dialing Jesus. There was a time when voices emanating from my pants would have caused concern. But now I just shrugged and pulled out my phone to hear a recording. You have reached the Son of God. I am currently speaking with another supplicant, but please hold. Your salvation is important to me. This was followed by canned music. I expected celestial choirs or maybe an elevator-friendly version of My Sweet Lord, but was instead treated to Delta blues guitar, interrupted soon by the voice of himself, greeting me by name and asking how he could serve. I was startled, didn't expect to actually get through. What's the one true religion? I asked, flustered, just to have something to say. All of them, he replied. None of them. I was taken aback. What? That's it? That's it, he said. Follow the golden rule. Leave the campground cleaner than you found it. Look, anything else? I got a lot of people on hold. I had nothing. Mumbled my thanks. He said, go in peace, and broke the connection. I put down the phone and stared out the window. The guy across the street was clearing snow off his sidewalk. Never really liked that dude, but I grabbed the shovel to go lend a hand. And Dave, yes, speaking of our Leonard Cohen event, I'll read this one. Big fans of Leonard Cohen. We actually share a birthday. Not that I can claim any special credit for that. If there's any credit, my mother should get it, but that's another discussion. He is a wonderful poet and obviously a wonderful songwriter. And we all know that first line from Hallelujah. They say there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. So this poem is Secret Chord for Leonard Cohen. They all thought this little shepherd boy was a fool to face Goliath. In truth, I thought something of the same myself, tossing and sweating on my bed of straw the night before that fateful day, visited by visions of the giant sword, long as I was tall, cleaving enemies from shoulder to waist with but a single blow. When I made music for Saul, my king, to soothe his troubled soul, it did not anger me that he so feared the giant, he had me do battle in his stead. It was not my place to judge, but simply play my harp to ease his mind. He would send his servants away. It was just the two of us, the sound of my harp echoing through that spacious, ornate, empty room, while he stared into the distance at something only he could see. Now, so many years later, as this crown sits heavy on my own head, I feel the burden of the throne. We who would be kings or queens of our own realms seldom realize how difficult it is truly to rule oneself. Seldom realize how quickly the years fly, all the words said or left unsaid, all the golden moments that each of us lets drift to earth, until in the end, one can easily become a master of regret. Saul, my king, what do I say to you now across this gulf of years? Do I say, offer up your sadness, your fear, your failures, your weakness, your longings, offer them up, offer up this song of your true self to that one who will accept it without judgment? Who can know, can ever know, what secret music flows like precious blood through the chambers of the human heart? This one I will read without preamble. This is for the Africans on slave ships who committed suicide by jumping overboard. You had to plan carefully. Wait for a moment when a deckhand or first mate's attention was elsewhere before climbing quickly onto the railing to dive into the dark waters. Sometimes a few of you joined hands, gazed into each other's eyes a moment before leaping. After suicide, ship's officers would mourn. Each death reduced the journey's profit. Some of you believed you would rise from the sea, find yourself at home in your villages once again, walking down hills where you played as children toward the smell of roasting yams and the sound of crowing roosters. Loved ones celebrating your return as the morning sun licked salt water from your ebony skin. And I'll close, but before I close, I'll thank you all for your kind attention. And I'll read a poem from my last book, Memento Mori. This is a conversation with my younger self. Congratulations to you, newly hatched grown-up. First solo apartment, boxes scattered around like soldiers exhausted after a long march. King Kong poster taped to the wall, a little crooked, now guarding the kitchen. The friends who helped you move are long gone. Empty beer bottles and pizza boxes, all that remain. Of course, hooking up the stereo was your first priority. And now Jimi Hendrix roars through these little rooms like a low-flying fighter jet. I peer at you through time's gauze curtain and realize how much I want to say. I want to tell you, go outside, look at the stars. Sometimes it's good to feel small. I want to tell you, a woman's love is a precious thing, not just a Saturday night's entertainment. I want to tell you, turn down the stereo and call your mother. I want to tell you all this and much more, but you can't hear a word I say. This isn't a conversation. It's the world's oldest bad joke. And I'm the punchline, this white-haired ghost brimming with after-the-fact wisdom on a boat pulling away from shore, sliding through dark water to some destination unknown, hopping up and down on one leg to get your attention, waving my arms and shouting as if what I'm saying could actually make a difference. And maybe you glance up a moment, puzzled by some faint disturbance in the air, as you eat one last slice of cold pizza off some dead grandmother's thrift shop dinner plate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. What a wonderful session our six poets have given us. And I want to urge you to go out or to go online and buy books by these poets. Someone mentioned that there are a couple of places to buy poetry where you don't have to make Jeff Bezos any richer. I've always used A-Books, and someone pointed out to me that A-Books is owned by our friend Bezos. But there are a couple of other sites. One of them is called bookshop.com, and another is called biblio.com. And there are ways of buying books that do not involve being a customer at Amazon. Some of us avoid Amazon the way we avoid meat or avoid other toxic substances. At any rate,
Dave, can
yes.
I just quickly say,
Yes, Charles.
pursuant to that order from, if all else fails, in fact, first, order from your local independent bookstore.
Right.
There's nothing that enormous company that starts with A can do for you that they can't do for you. So support what supports you.
Find the name of the publisher online and order it from the publisher or from your local bookstore. And tell your local bookstore not to order from the A company. Are there any questions for our poets that you would like to pose on the chat? Our lovely audience. I'm not seeing any so far, but I didn't invite you before. If there's anything you'd like to know from them.
Or you can also raise your little hand down in the reactions part of the Zoom, and we will give you the floor.
Right.
And while we're doing that, I'm going to put up our community church's website, where if you like, you can go and find out more about us and our fabulous history, and about how you can help us keep going by, here's my symbolic little donation basket, also a beautiful basket from Uganda. And I'm about to put up the website. credit card or PayPal. There's also an address I will put up where you can send an old-fashioned paper check. And while we're at it, I want to invite all of you, especially the poets, to come down and take in this ridiculous ocean of books that we've been deluged with, and help us figure out what to do with them. Are we to become a bookstore or a library, or what? There's a huge poetry section in this collection of books that we haven't even finished unpacking. And we're here dependably every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're also here every Sunday morning. And you can often find me here on Tuesdays and Thursdays as well. So be in touch. My email address is very easy. It's dean@deanstevens.com. And it would be really fun to receive anyone who would like to come down and have a look. If you come on a Tuesday or a Friday, which is when Luis Guzman, our cook and janitor, comes in, we can probably enjoy some pupusas together. Luis comes from Chelsea, and there are pupusas to be had there at $1 a piece. And he often brings them for us, and it's a wonderful way to have lunch together. So that is really an open invitation. We are not an official gathering place quite yet, but you are welcome to come on a Sunday and be with us physically, as another wonderful poet, Karin Klein, is with us today, and also Carolyn Poinelli. So feel free, when you feel safe and feel right, to join us again physically, but we are also here virtually, and we recognize now the importance of this virtual meeting, because it allows certain people who can't come physically, including some longtime members, to join us here every Sunday morning. And also on other occasions, like every Friday night when we have a music concert. And also, I want to say a little word about what happened last Monday. We hosted an event on Palestine, Israel, featuring a speaker from Jerusalem, Jeff Halper, and a speaker from Boston, Leila Farsak. We did not expect to get 180 applicants or people sign up. And I found out about it like 15 minutes before when I walked in. We were only able to receive 100 because of the Zoom limits. We have since enhanced our enrollment in Zoom and how much we have to pay so that we can receive the proper amount. So if you join our mailing list, and if you put your email in the chat, we can keep you posted on future forums of that sort. We're just organizing one on the climate emergency in the next couple of weeks. We're working with the Friends Meeting House in Cambridge on that. And
Dean?
that's what we got. David, go ahead.
Yeah, go back to the beginning of our morning. The Community Church of Boston has its own page on YouTube, which is called the Community Church of Boston Official. Is that right?
That's right.
Official page. And today's session, as well as the first Murmuration of Poets that took place, I guess, last fall, will be available there. So I urge you to revisit our sessions, because poetry passes by you and you're stunned by it, but you say, I'd love to hear that again. Well, you can do that. You can do that. One other thing, I do not wish to defend Ezra Pound's politics. He really was making radio broadcasts for the original fascists, I mean Mussolini's fascists, toward the end of the war. And the result was that he was arrested when he came to the United States and thrown into a mental hospital. But I will say one thing about the influence of Pound. My hero and one of my mentors, the great Nicaraguan poet Ernesto Cardenal, who died this last, I guess it was in March, when he was in New York studying and reading, he found a great liberation in being able to use news and journalism and current events and the voices of people living in the real world in his poetry. It was a great liberation for him, a great liberation for Nicaraguan poetry. And then he said he gave that credit for that to Ezra Pound. So I don't myself go back to Pound much these days, but there is he leaves in his wake not just shit. There's also some wonderful stuff there that trails behind Ezra Pound. So let's give credit where credit's due.
Well, it just so happens, David, that in the chat there's a reference to Leonard Cohen, Zionist, and the question is, does that obviate all the songs that he wrote? There is also Richard Wagner. Should he be erased from history because he was a white supremacist? It's all a really good question to ask and to ponder. And meanwhile, there's a question from Inez Hedges about
excuse me, Dean.
Yes, go ahead, Charles.
While you mentioned Cohen and Zionism, and I think it was Daniel Contact who asked that question. Saying should his music be discounted because he was a Zionist? Well, it begs the question to call him a Zionist, because all the reading that I've done about Cohen made it clear that he was a very strong supporter of the state of Israel, but that he was also a very strong proponent of peace with Arab people, and he spoke and wrote about that pretty extensively. So I think, again, it's begging the question to call him a Zionist. Not everybody who supports the nation of Israel supports all its military and social policies. I mean, and that's nuanced. I think it's very difficult sometimes for people to grapple with. But to the general question of how should what you know about an artist's personal or political or social life, how should it affect your attitude toward their work? There's no one answer to that question. It depends entirely on the circumstances and what it was the person did or was accused of doing. So, I mean, looking at Bill Cosby, I'm not inclined to watch the old Bill Cosby show and chuckle. I once admired him greatly. So, and I know women who will never pay another penny to watch a Woody Allen movie. So, you know, it's a complicated question, and everyone has to make their own judgments in these matters. But Dean, I interrupted you. You had something you were fixing to say a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. Inez asks if any poets translated other poets, and what are the challenges?
I've been working on a translation of Robert Lowell's For the Union Dead. We had an idea a few years ago that we would take a Poets Theater delegation down to the annual Poetry Festival in Havana. But politics and money problems put that awry, and I don't think there's any chance we do it this coming year. But I'd love to have the six of you and myself just to go down to Havana and talk poetry with the Cubans. Wait, Barbara has an idea.
Unmute yourself, Barbara, and talk to us.
Go ahead, Barbara. You're on.
I'm on board.
All right, you're on board. Yeah,
I'm on board.
Pack your bags. Pack your bags.
Yes.
Havana. No, we had a wonderful contacts with the Writers Union in Havana, and they were very excited about it. And a couple of their poets came up to Harvard, and we met with them. We were all ready to go, but money was a problem, and red tape was a problem. But this was still during the Obama administration, actually.
Well, David, I was in Cuba in January of 2020,
Oh, yeah?
teaching a study abroad program for Salve Regina University in Newport, where I teach in the MFA program. And students had the option of going to Newport for their 10-day residency or going to Cuba for the 10-day residency. And I was one of the 2 faculty that went to Cuba for the 10 days with 12 students. And it was an incredible experience, incredible. I would relish any chance to go back there. Now, they're having their problems now. But boy, I've never seen a place where there was so much engagement with music and art and dance at every level. It was just like in the country's DNA. It was an amazing experience.
Yep. And a great history of poetry in Cuba. Nicolas Guillen and Jose Marti, revolutionaries and poets together, like Ernesto Cardenal. You can do both. You can chew gum and fart at the same time.
Well, am I muted? No, on the subject, I think we're getting to a conclusion here, unless there are any other questions or comments. Carolyn, who is in the audience here, has a question. Come on up to the desk, Carolyn. You don't want to come up, so tell me what's the question. It's all right.
I want you to ask, out of context, perhaps mention why I'm asking how anybody feels about Ezra Pound.
It's some of the same, asking how anybody feels about Ezra Pound.
Well, I think David pretty much summed that up.
Yes, I do
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
And what should we do with all these books? It's like, is it like incriminating evidence that they're sitting here? Is there any maybe institution, or is he collectible? Could we put the whole kit and caboodle on sale on Abe Books for? Well, it could be. Maybe I don't know. It's all very. A lot of Bob's books are in pretty rough shape. It seems like he combed all of the remainder sections and all of the sale places of Harvard Bookstore and Filene's. I never knew that Filene's was a major bookseller, but there's tons of books with a little Filene sticker on sale for $1.50 or something from the 60s when he was actively hoarding and purchasing books. Anyway, it's just a good question. Maybe I should read some Ezra Pound just to like hold my nose and find out what it's all about. Dorothy has a question. Hi, Dorothy.
Hi, Dean. Hi, everybody. This was wonderful. And I have a question, but before I want to say that, I want to say that I recently read that Pound was a champion of James Joyce early on, yes, and of some other poets that were modern and might have been resisted, and he was helpful to them. So my question was, the poetry is wonderful, the reading was wonderful. I wonder if a poet has to practice reading their own poems. I mean, I find I have to practice, and if I just want to read to other people that I meet with periodically, I don't do very well. So how much practice does one have to give, even if you know your poem, if you created it?
Dorothy, have you ever gone to a reading of a poet or prose writer whose work blew you away when you read it? And when you sat there listening to them read, 10, 15 minutes into it, you were longing for the sweet release of death. And you were thinking, Christ.
It wasn't the case today. Today was not such a case.
No, I'm not talking about today. I'm talking about other times.
I know.
But the short answer to your question is, just like any other skill, you have to work at it.
Mm-hmm.
And in my workshops and in my MFA programs, that's one of the things that I do with students. I help them I help them develop the ability to read their work effectively to other people. And you know, it's good to practice with, ask your family or a group of friends to sit and read. You know, it's something that you get better at and more comfortable with as you do it. And one thing that I would urge you and anybody else to avoid is poet voice. You know,
right.
I am reading this poem. As I read this poem, I am reading this poem to you. I was working with some sixth graders one time talking about that, and took one of their poems and read it like that as a bad ham actor. And one of the kids said, "Wow, that was a feelings ball, like a cat's hair ball." I said, "Scotty, you blew my mind. I've never heard it said better, and I'll never be able to say it better. And I'm going to quote you for the rest of my life in my classes." And I will.
In the Poets Theater, by the way, we have a saying that we all grew up with, what's called the American Poetry Drone Strike. A little bit like the Gregorian chant, somniferous Gregorian chant. And I come out of the theater as well as poetry. Poetry and theater are equally parts of my soul. And so learning how to speak poetry with sincerity and honesty to other human beings does take some practice. And I sent some notes to our 6 poets today, sort of saying, please read slowly and read clearly,
Yes.
which is not what all poets are told to do. And I thought everyone read wonderfully, although think of the variety of the 6 voices we heard today. No similarity between the 6, each one with her or his own sort of tonality and clarity. And I think, but we do have to keep in the back of our minds that the poetry we listened to when we were younger, which really did have that drone-like quality. But we're moving away from that, and that's part of the Poets Theater's mission, is to teach people in the world of poetry what works in the theater, and to teach theater people how to respect and declaim or recite or speak poetry. So.
And Dorothy, I'd just like to add something, and that is that while you're composing your poem, I think it's a good idea to read it out loud, because often you'll find where the rhythm goes awry, or where something is, where there's a clunker. So after you've completed a draft or 2, reading out loud will lead you to, I think, a more finished and more graceful and more rhythmic and sonorous poem. So, as far as reading out loud, I think I would recommend that to anyone who's composing a poem.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Original poets were illiterate. They didn't know how to read. They only memorized and spoke. That's where poetry came from, not from a page. It came from memory and the voice, the larynx, not the page.
Although back in the day, when you had the traveling poets and traveling bards, somebody would go stand up on a rock and people were coming in from the fields, and you declaim poetry, and you better sell it. You better have a good delivery, or people would just walk on by you and you didn't get to eat or sleep in the barn that night. So I think that there's a tradition of, the word sonorous is a perfect word, Barbara, because even if you're not doing rhyming poetry, metered poetry, and people say, well, yeah, there's a relation to music in that stuff. Even if you're doing free verse, blind verse, there's still a musical flow. It's not Beethoven, but it's like a Coltrane jazz solo, and it has to flow. And the advice to read your stuff out loud is a bullseye, because your ear will catch clunkers that you don't necessarily see on the page of the screen.
Yeah.
Your ear will catch clunkers. Title of my next book.
You go, David.
All right.
It's all yours.
All right. Thank you.
I just want a signed copy. That's what I want.
Well, I want to thank David Gullette for bringing these wonderful voices together this morning.
A real joy.
Yes, thank
Join
you.
us this Friday for a concert by this guy named Dean Stevens, benefit for a water project in El Salvador. Join us next Sunday for our annual W.E.B. Du Bois address. The speaker's name is Tony Bogues. I don't know if I pronounced his last name correctly, B-O-G-U-E-S. And he is a professor at Brown University. And the title is Historical Repair and American Democracy, the W.E.B. Du Bois address. Du Bois spoke many times, of course, at Community Church during the 40s and the 50s to huge audiences at Symphony Hall.
Yes.
So thanks again for joining us. And I want to conclude with a little reading for the day from my favorite poet. I have a pile of a sort of poet, halfway between poet and essayist, Eduardo Galeano. I have a pile of his books here at the church right now. I just had to bring them in because I think they wanted to be with all these other books just momentarily, and then they could go home and be with other big collections of people obsessed with one author. Anyway, Eduardo Galeano, Uruguayan author who passed away about 3 years ago. And this is his Children of the Days, that is in a style that he is very versed in writing, which is 3 paragraph vignettes. And this is the one for February 20th. It's called World Day of Social Justice. At the end of the 19th century, Juan Pio Acosta lived near Uruguay's border with Brazil. In those lonely parts, his work kept him on the road, moving from town to town. He traveled by stagecoach along with 8 other passengers in first, second, and third class. Juan Pio always bought a third-class ticket, which was the least expensive. There were 3 different prices. Everyone had the same seats, whether they paid more or paid less. Jammed in, eating dust, jolted relentlessly. He never understood why until one bad winter day when the wagon stuck in the mud. The coachman ordered, "First class, stay where you are. Second class, get off. Those in third, start pushing." The gospel according to Eduardo Galeano in the Community Church of Boston. So be it. And maybe on that note, we say thank you to these wonderful poets. Thank you to Poets Theater. And thank you to all of you who joined us today. This, yes, go ahead, David, or who is that?
That's Lenny. Just wanted to say hello to everybody from New Mexico. I wanted to get away from the New England. I wanted to get away from the New England winter for a month, and everybody should come down here to Taos and Santa Fe sometime. It's fantastic.
Lovely. That's great. Greetings to Lenny, who usually joins us from Brunswick, Maine, but now is in New Mexico. Welcome, Lenny, and if you get a chance to say hi to our friend Eliza Gilkison, songwriter who lives in Taos and plays frequently there, please say hello to her for us. Okay. So we are all done. Thank you all for joining us. And we are at the point of declaring, and come see us down at the church, Copley Square, declaring the meeting at the building to be officially for this Sunday, over till next Sunday, till we meet again. Someday we'll be together. Someday we